Hello and welcome back to the Roundup by News of the Week, the show where I, Jake Whitwell, summarise and explain the key news, helping you stay informed. This week's a little bit different. I've changed around with the format, and to make News of the Week better and the Roundup better, and to embody the change that we'd like, or the transparency that we'd like to see in the media, the links to all of the stories I've collected will be, and anything else that I've used to explain them, will be in the description on wherever you see this episode. If it's on my website, they won't be there on that, but they will be there on YouTube and Spotify, so I recommend checking them out in those places. With that in mind, I'll get on to the news now. Firstly, I'm going to discuss the grooming gang scandal that's been going on this week. It's been a massive issue this week and to the tail end of last week as well, so we're just going to go into that. On that then, The Standard reported that Starmer has faced backlash over his comments over the grooming gang scandal. And to treat this issue properly on the Roundup, I've written up Starmer's words. Those spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible are not interested in victims, they are interested in themselves. Those who are cheering Tommy Robinson are not interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming gang case. These are people trying to get some vicarious thrill from street violence, and those attacking Jess Phillips, who I am proud to have as a colleague and a friend, are not protecting victims. Jess Phillips has helped 1,000 times more than they've ever dreamt about when it comes to protecting victims of child abuse, and so just as I called out the criminal justice system when I was a prosecutor, I'm prepared to call this out for what it is. We've seen this playbook many times: intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it, and Jess Phillips does not need me or anyone else to speak on her behalf. These two serious threats to Jess Phillips and others show that in my book a line has been crossed. I enjoyed the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have, but that's got to be based on facts, truth and solid lines, not on lies, not on those who are so desperate for attention that they're prepared to debase themselves and their country. So this government will get on with the job of protecting victims, including transsexual abuse, mandatory aborting, accelerating the processes, but what I won't tolerate is this discussion and debate based on lies without calling it out. What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon to simply get attention when those politicians sat in government for 14 long years. Tweeting, talking, not doing anything about it. So those were Starmer's words, and following this, a shadow minister said that it's not far right to stand up for mass rape. Those were Starmer's words, and following this, a shadow minister said it's not far right to stand up for the victims of mass rape. Chris Phillips, the Shadow Home Secretary, said smearing people who raised concerns is exactly how we ended up getting in this place in the first place, getting in this situation in the first place. Starmer is insinuating Starmer's blocking off debate. James Cleverly, the former Tory leadership hopeful, also chimed in and he said, when will Starmer and Labour learn? Accusing those who disagree with him or who seek legitimate answers about repeated failures of child protection as far right is deeply insulting and counterproductive. He called Starmer the best recruiting sergeant for extremism, and you can only assume he said this. Because you can only assume he was doing that because in dismissing people, in raising concerns, you're also dismissing those real people with real arguments and real issues, or trying to bring about real issues, not just the extremists, which Starmer sees as an issue. And obviously, if he's just calling those people for holding that view extremists, then that's exactly what Cleverly's saying. It drives people to that cause. Criticism has also come from social media over the last few days, with Elon Musk especially being a proponent of that. Starmer's words of spreading lies information, that's where they were probably targeted. I mean, he did that in August with social media, he's likely done it again, doing it again now. That's not to say there isn't a bad role for social media. I mean, there definitely was in August. I wrote about it in my article on the subject, but that doesn't mean that in every case it is, and that's what this criticism is trying to make, from what I can tell. Yvette Cooper, regardless of all that discourse, has announced that she will make it mandatory to report abuse, and that a victim survivors panel will be established to advise on wider work on the subject. So there is progress being made in some areas. Miss Cooper also made this political, regrettably, I'm sure, and she said that those calling for the inquiry were in government for 10 years, and that they could have held that inquiry at any point in those 10 years, but they didn't until last week, and I'm not sure how badly that reflects on her in general sentiment, but it's just getting political, it's removing itself from the issue. In my view, it's not actually helpful. Now, moving on to schools and Labour's school reform, Times noted Michael Gove has called Labour's school reform a tragedy for academies. And you might be asking, what's in Labour's school reform? And I'm going to say, give me 1 second and I'll explain it. Labour's school bill is designed to improve children's safety and education standards in this country. And here's what they're doing. I've got a list. They're going to introduce a register for home-educated children. They're going to add a policy to prohibit homeschooling if a child is subject to a protection plan or whether it's unsafe, it's deemed unsafe for them to be at home. They will introduce unique identifiers for children, similar to a national insurance number, in hopes that it will help protect well-being. So that's 3 things. They'll move away from academy schooling, meaning that failing schools will not be forced into academies. They will launch an independent review into the national curriculum, aiming to establish more consistency there, because currently academies can deviate from that. The idea there is that it brings consistency to teaching. It seems that will also affect teacher pay in equalising it across academies, and bring it back in line with national pay scales. So the Tories have described this as educational vandalism. Michael Gove went further and said it was worse. It's a deliberate attempt by Labour to erode and dismantle, he said dismantle brick by brick, one of the most significant cross-party achievements in the last 2 decades. Jess Phillips denied this repeatedly, and she said that the bill has been misrepresented. She didn't say how it should be represented, just that it has been misrepresented conveniently. And then concerns were also shared by, I'm going to butcher this name, Dame Siobhan, I'm guessing Siobhan McDonough. Anyway, she's a Labour MP, and she has concerns that the compulsion aspect of the national commitment curriculum policy and the changes to teacher pay won't actually be helpful. There are also wider concerns about whether those things to help children's welfare, like the unique identifiers, things like that, won't actually help as much as they say they might, but that remains to be seen. The Independent covered comments from Tory leader Kemi Badenoch over this, and she said Labour's school reform shows that Britain is back under union control. She accused Labour of fronting Jeremy Corbyn's policies and that they were just doing what the unions tell them to. She said the current Labour Party and their policies was Jeremy Corbyn's dream. A government source dismissed her comments as ludicrous. Meanwhile, the National Education Union, the NEU, has welcomed the proposals, not necessarily undermining Badenoch's arguments. She went further, though, and said that Labour's way of making everyone equal is by dragging everyone down rather than dragging them up. And that's all I got on schools. Reform UK was one of the other issues massively talked about this week, so I've included a section on them. The Telegraph noted a man has been charged with sending malicious communications to Jess Phillips after the row with Musk. 39-year-old Jack Bennett has been charged with sending offensive messages to Miss Phillips, the MP for Birmingham Yardley, and 2 other people. Charged with 3 counts. He was charged with 3 counts of malicious communication between April last year and this month. The Telegraph article gave no insight into what could be in the messages, but official guidelines on the sentencing says that it's either grossly offensive or indecent, and the offence is punishable by either 2 years in prison, a fine, or a mixture of both. And I'd assume dependent on the exact content of the message. The Times detailed Farage will sacrifice a donation from Elon Musk to keep out Tommy Robinson. And this thing relates to the spat that we've seen over the last week or so between Musk and Farage over Tommy Robinson and grooming gangs and things like that. So it's part of that disagreement going on X. Now, the Times picked up an excerpt from Farage's response, the part where he said he won't be bought very easily. I think a lot of people in the media have talked this up as being a fractured relationship between Musk and Farage and a bit of an end to their really quite close relationship. But if we believe what Farage has to say, I know many people don't believe what Farage has to say, but if we take him on his word, he still sees Musk as a hero, and the one little disagreement might not affect them too much. We'll wait and see, though. I'm sure it'll be covered in future episodes. LBC noted Richard Tice has said Elon Musk cannot buy reform. He's echoed the party leader Nigel Farage's comments. Basically, he seemingly backed Nigel Farage. Tice told Andrew Marr the party has strong convictions which no one can buy or sway, and the rest of the article recap much of what we've already discussed, so I won't bore you with it. Now we move on to Liz Truss's legal action. The Telegraph reported Truss has sent a cease and desist letter to Keir Starmer over the use of the wording or the phrase that she crashed the economy with her mini budget. I don't want any letters from lawyers, so I'm going to be right careful what I say here. But her lawyers are arguing it's false and defamatory to say that. They've cited Andrew Lillico, who is involved with the Institute of Economic Affairs, a right-leaning think tank, and he said in a report that the claim of a crash might be technically wrong because the economy has been growing faster in the period, and some economic signifiers like a fall in rise in unemployment and a fall in output would actually means that it also can't be called a crash. So I think it's on a technical basis. LBC noted causing Kwarteng, Truss's former chancellor, has said that this was for publicity reasons, though. He said he didn't understand the rationale in sending a letter as it wouldn't stop open debate in Commons. He said in the Commons, he said that he suspected it was for publicity and that there are bigger dangers now than there were in 2022. As far as I can tell, this seems to relate to like a actual parliamentary procedure where they're free from it's like parliamentary privilege. They're kind of free from being put under those like legal restrictions of libel and the other one, the verbal one. Sorry, I can't remember it now. Slander, but libel and slander, because it's in the Commons, it's open debate. I think that's what Kwarteng's referencing there. In other news, I'm losing the lights, I've got to be quick. The Independent reported David Lammy is set to unveil the world's first sanctions regime to tackle people smuggling gangs. The Foreign Secretary is set to announce that sanctions to target the finances and disrupt the flow of money, meaning that gang leaders cannot earn as much money or earn money as effectively out of doing that dangerous trade. It's the world's first set of sanctions to tackle what it does, and it will put international cooperation at the forefront. The Guardian detailed a survey has found civil service morale has worsened despite pay increases. A report by the IFG, the Institute for Government, has found that engagement has dropped throughout for a third year in a row, despite there being pay increases, with job churn also slightly increasing. So that means the people are leaving and then getting in and leaving again jobs quite quickly within the civil service. And also they're moving between departments quite quickly. The IFG said this relates to civil servants feeling like the management isn't going very well and they're a little despondent about leadership. Crucially, there's been 3 new departments made over the last few months, so that could be the reason why. The Sun reported Badenoch is set to hold off on announcing policy for 2 years. That sounds like she's got no plan, and maybe we would assume that of a party that's just crashed out at the Commons in quite a spectacular fashion, and one that has just had a conclusion to its leadership. Could be a bit of a misrepresentation from the Sun, because she's unveiled a 3-year plan to turn the Tories around, and prepare them for government. In 2025, she will focus on rebuilding trust with the electorate. In 2026, she will attempt to establish credibility. And then in 2027 and 2028, she will start to announce policy and like a provisional manifesto sort of thing. And that will be set out somewhere in 2027, likely late 2027. Some of the shadow cabinet have said that it needs to go quicker, so it's not a unified agreement in the Tory party, and we'll probably see more of that as this plan commences. The Standard observed the First Minister is set to visit the UK's first consumption room, and I covered this ages ago in the roundup, possibly before it was even in this podcast form, where Scotland were implementing consumption rooms where you could legally take drugs to try and reduce the dangers associated with it, and in the hope that people seek help for their drug taking habits. So the facility, according to John Swinney, marks a crucial step in reducing drug-related harm in Scotland, where it is relatively high compared to the rest of the UK. The facility will allow drug users to take legal substances under medical supervision, like I just said, and it will hope to tackle addictions. Swinney said drug-related deaths in Scotland remain too high, unacceptably high in Scotland, he said, and noting that each loss of life is a tragedy. He also said it's a pioneering first for the UK, so maybe we'll see a wider rollout if it works in Scotland. We'll see. Sky News detailed the majority of the public have said that Elon Musk is having a negative impact on British politics. An opinion poll found 53% of the more than 2,000 surveyed said that he's having a negative effect on British politics, while only 12% said he was having a positive one. Going into the issues and like moving away from the sort of generality of those terms, 26% of people said he was having a positive impact on the grooming gangs, while 47% of people judged his impact to be negative. The Guardian reported the UK government are set to crack down on MPs' second jobs, specifically in the media. Plans are being considered by ministers which will prohibit MPs from signing huge deals with broadcasting firms. In truth, that's not completely accurate, and it would affect all outside interests, not just media ones. A cross-party modernisation committee are looking at enhancing restrictions. That is true. This is in order to improve standards, working practices, and make the Commons more effective. There's also hopes it would improve trust in politics as well. Importantly, though, it would not stop the current deals we're seeing, which are quite lucrative for a lot of MPs, some earning hundreds of thousands of pounds from second jobs. Rightly or wrongly. It would implement changes, though, to deal with conflict of interest in these things and protect the reputation of all MPs in the House. So there would be maybe better vetting of what jobs MPs are being allowed to take. I'm not sure how that would look. The Independent reported Trump has sent his son. The Independent noted Trump has sent his son to Greenland after touting a merger with Canada and seemingly playing up an expansion to the USA. As we draw close to the president taking office, he's been back on Truth Social a lot and announced some new things going on there, or that he'd like to see there. Some of the posts have said things like many people in Canada would love to become a 51st state. If Canada merged with the US, there would be no tariffs, taxes would go way down, and they would be totally secure, saying what a great nation it would be. The incoming president also wrote that his son will be going to Greenland with an eye on acquiring it from with an eye on acquiring it. Now that's all the news I collected this week in all departments. Any support you can leave on this episode would be great. Please subscribe, like, or comment on it. That would be fantastic. I hope you found it useful. Have a good week. Bye.